going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I wanted to bring to you a discussion on being one step ahead in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now that's a bit fucking vague, right? So on a micro level, being one step ahead is a pretty obvious concept because, you know, when you're playing a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Against an opponent, the idea is that if you're one step ahead, you're pretty much always going to know what they're going to do next so that you can prepare for that move and pretty much outplay them, so to speak, and that generally will help you win a lot more of your games. But I'm not necessarily focusing on the micro level aspect here. I'm focusing more on the macro level, holistic aspect, which is being one step ahead in terms of knowledge and information about the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm going to use a really good example here. So, currently right now, in the OCG, if you're not currently aware, there is the Junishishi or Zodiac Beast archetype that's currently dominating Japan. And, you know, before Junishishi, it was ABC, before ABC, it was Blue Eyes, etc., etc., etc. There's always, like, this one deck in the OCG that, for the most part, is always kind of tearing shit up. Now, what's interesting about being in the TCG is that we have a lot of foresight into what's coming up next. So, you know, while ABC, for instance, was dominant in the OCG, here in the TCG, we were watching that, and pretty much anyone who's an average or above average player, if you're watching any sort of coverage about the OCG, you can easily identify that ABC is an incredibly strong deck because it was basically dominating the OCG for months. So, by being one step ahead in this aspect, it pretty much shows that, like, by watching the markets, you know, you saw Ultimate Rare Photon Thrashers becoming extremely expensive, Super Rare Terraformings, pretty much every max rarity version of every card required in ABCs became incredibly expensive because we here in the TCG noticed that ABC is the best deck in the OCG, and so we wanted to be prepared here in the TCG for that deck. And that goes along with cards like countering the deck as well, like Ghost Reaper, Chaos Hunter, System Down, things like that. You also saw those tick up in price. Now, pretty much it's a never-ending cycle with needing to be one step ahead. And I feel that that really detracts from our ability to really enjoy the present game for what it is. You know, right now we're in ABC format where ABC is pretty much the dominant deck. We still have a few other decks running around, but ABC for the most part has solidified itself as the most prevalent and powerful deck thus far. But the interesting thing about that is, a lot of us already are watching and see that Junishishi is basically just as prevalent as it was, as ABC was rather, in the OCG. So, you know, people are already picking up their Ultimate Rare Tenkis, their Super Tensus, like everything that they might need to play this deck. They're already starting to pick up those cards because they know as soon as the Junishishi archetype is released that the chance of that being the best deck is incredibly high due to its success in the OCG, and they're going to want to pick up those cards immediately and as fast as possible. This also goes for learning the deck and playing the deck on things like Dev Pro and YGO Pro, because the fact that we know that this deck is going to be so good, you want to start playing with it, learning the combos, learning the weaknesses, learning the intricacies of the deck as quickly as you can, so that when the deck is released, you already have 2 to 3 weeks of experience under your belt, so that if you get the deck built and play in your first tournament, you have an extreme advantage over anyone else playing the deck, because it could be their first time playing it, whereas you've been playing it for weeks and you already know all the combos, all the ins and outs, everything. So, again, this goes back to my point that this really kind of detracts from our ability to enjoy the game in the present moment. And the reason for that is because we're always having to look one step ahead into the future to see what's next. Even though right now we're in ABC format, a lot of us are concerned with Junishishi format because once those come out, that's going to be the best deck. And you know, once we get Junishishis, OCG is going to have another best deck that we're going to have to be looking on, and it's a never-ending cycle. We're always having to look for what's next and not really enjoy what we currently have at the moment. And the interesting thing about this is that the OCG doesn't have this problem because the OCG is the first, you know, area or territory to get the new cards. You know, they're announcing the new cards left and right for the OCG, maybe weeks before they come out, but you're not seeing them having to focus on, like, what's next because they don't know what's next. It ends with them. So when Junishishi's the best deck, there's nothing else that they even are aware of that's coming out yet, except maybe like a couple new cards from the next set, but they do not have nearly the amount of time and foresight that we have the opportunity of, you know, that we're gifted to be able to kind of look at these things. And then that transition is very interesting because right now you're seeing people maining Ghost Cherries, you're seeing people main Chaos Hunter, all these extremely, you know, side deck worthy cards that you would not necessarily consider for the main deck. We're playing them in the main deck here in the TCG, and the OCG was never doing that. You might have seen that happen maybe once, but here we're seeing YCS tops with these cards in the main deck. So that just goes to show how concerned we are by looking into the future and knowing like that this is going to be the thing, analyzing the meta, or at least forecasting what the meta is going to look like, and then take advantage of that once it comes here in the TCG. So this was just a whole interesting thought that I had of, you know, always having to be looking into the future as a TCG player, rather than, you know, being in the OCG where you don't really have any foresight, so you're kind of just learning the format, trying to perfect the format that you currently have, and then once you learn about the new stuff, which is maybe only a few weeks away, then you can kind of take the time to worry about that. So just kind of interesting West versus East perspective here, and I was really curious what your guys' thoughts were on this as well. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video if you haven't already, subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh content, and be sure to back me on Patreon, because just by pledging $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to bring you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thank you guys so much again. We'll see you next time.